Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome along, Soulful House Mafia. Tuesday evening. Boy, oh boy. Talk about skin of our teeth. We have had some technical issues, but we are here a few minutes late. Thank you for being here, guys. Yours truly, Andy Ward. And tonight we have got two gentlemen who I've shared a hell of a lot of stories with, a hell of a lot of drinks with, a lot of DJ booths with, and it's going to be my pleasure to bring them onto the screen now. Hopefully it's all working fine. Okay, so we need to kind of start again, really, because not everybody that will be watching the recording will be aware of what's happening. We were meant to go live at 7 o'clock UK time on Tuesday, the 9th of November. And what had happened, and I totally skipped my mind, is that I'd done a system update. And then since the last time I was live, and the audio drivers for my sound card needed updating. So that's basically what had happened, the joys. And I'm still going to blame Neil, because if he'd have been on time, I probably would have worked that out earlier.
Not true, but
even if I was half hour earlier, you would have still been 15 minutes late.
No, because I would have sorted it out. So, very quick introduction. Once again, Soulful House Mafia, celebrating some of the guys who are responsible for the incredible sounds that we have in the UK and beyond. And I've got two of my very good friends here, Mr. Aaron Ross and Neil Pierce. We ascertained that it's Aaron, not Aaron, for anybody that cares to differ, from the horse's mouth here. Two gentlemen, we share over 2 decades of history, and we're going to do our best to shed some light on that, amongst many other things, as we go along. So, Lisa's here, John's here, anyone else that's here, sending shouts outs. If you see any problems, guys, then please do let me know. I'll start off with you then, Aaron. We met around about 1997, 1998. But before that, you got involved in the music industry via your family. I did hear you say
yes,
a little bit. So let's take us back to the beginning of the story.
Yeah, I'll just the family bit as a quick thing. I do come from a kind of music business family, music industry family. My mum, my dad, my uncle were all involved in some capacity. So it was always around me as a kid, and you know, just kind of different elements of the industry and different artists and stuff that my family were working with. So I was kind of, I guess, destined to kind of follow that path to a degree. And part of that early journey for me was pirate radio, massive part of it. Playing jungle, drum and bass, 13 years old, 90, whatever that would have been, 92, 93, around that point.
Tell them what your DJ name was, Aaron.
I know, I'm proud of it. My jungle DJ name was DJ Stamina.
DJ Stamina?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Nice.
I'm proud of it, mate. And yeah, through pirate radio was kind of like my early kind of introduction to DJing. And I got to tell one very quick story about pirate radio, which was that I learned to DJ on belt drives, right? Sound labs. And I'd never played on Technics. My first time playing on Technics was live on pirate radio. And as you guys would know, as vinyl DJs, playing on Technics is very different to playing on belt drives, so it didn't go too well. But they gave me a shot, and I carried on with this pirate radio station for a few years, and then when I was old enough to leave school, just got a job at a record label, and that's when I met you.
Okay, so how did you get the job at VC Recordings then? Part of Virgin.
Virgin Records, yeah, it was a bit of nepotism, really. My uncle was working there at the time, but you know, I got my foot in the door through that, got some work experience through him. That was just a kind of while I was still at school, work experience thing. And then when I left school, just got back in there and was just kind of temping and doing as much as I could to get in there. And then finally got a full-time job there, and was working at, like you say, VC Recordings and Virgin's dance department. And my job at that point, mainly at the very beginning, was like just putting vinyl into mailers, and it was all you know, we were promoting records, promoting dance records, remixes, house records to DJs. And yeah, the grunt work when it was all vinyl was sending out vinyl to DJs and you know, following up with the DJs and calling around to get their reactions and all of that club promotion stuff that you know, that's how I met you, calling you to see if you got the records that I sent you. And met Neil at the same time, around that time, which we'll come on to. But yeah, that was the kind of early days for me.
That's the introduction for yourself. So you kind of skirted around your age. So when were you born? I thought we had a few years on you. What year
I was
were you
born 79. I'm
Okay.
42.
Okay, wow. So
Yeah, I've got a few years on me.
yeah, quite a few. So I don't know how that timeline works then if you were 16. But then again,
Well, I was 97. You
yeah,
know,
that would,
I was
of course, it would
16,
make sense. Sorry, I'm getting my
98. I was straight out of school,
I'm
straight
getting
into
my
work.
70s and my 80s mixed up.
Yeah, wouldn't
Okay, so let's. Oh, what's going on here? Neil, tell us about your baptism of fire into the music scene, North London boy.
Well, mine was completely different. I come from a family of builders, and I was working on a building site, buying music every weekend, going out with my brother, buying music, loved the music. And I had an accident on one of the building sites. And this was just before our youngest was born. And so I couldn't go back to work because I'd busted all my collarbone and shoulder blade up. Someone dropped a brick off an high-rise block and it hit me on the shoulder. And so after that, I ended up going down to Release the Groove, that was my favourite record shop at the time, and just asking them if they had any part-time work. Before then, I mean, I grew up, like my early days were very much around playing rare groove, reggae, sound systems. My brother got me into house music, but I never really see it as a career. I kind of just went out and bought records every week just because I loved playing music. I didn't ever think I'd be a DJ or a producer or anything like that. I had no real intention in that. And even when I started working in a record shop, it was to make ends meet, to provide for my family, rather than thinking, well, this is going to be a way for me to break through. So yeah, mine was a complete accident, to be fair.
Right,
There
so
was no plan.
tell us some of the DJs that you'd have looked up to before even thinking of, you know, going down that road yourself. Where the parties you were going out to in the scene.
Oh, I mean, obviously, Bobby and Steve, Trouble, Lyndon C, Rob Axon, Ricky Morrison, Chrissy, all of those kind of main kind of London guys. But even before that, when I first started going out with my brother, it wasn't even so much the US kind of garage scene. It was more, you know, Danny Ramplin and Judge Jules and Roy the Roach and people like that in the very early 90s that I used to go and see. Someone who worked in Quaff Records, Inky, who was one of the sales girls there, she introduced me to Trouble and that whole more US garage sound. And that was me, because I was a soul boy originally. And then I got into house. And then when I discovered like Bobby and Trouble and people like that, it was just like the perfect marriage, because it was house music, but soulful. So it instantly resonated with me.
Hmm. So you would have started working at Release the Groove around about the same time that Aaron was at VC.
Yeah.
97,
I think
98?
yeah, 98 is when I started there.
Because that's when I would have met you as well. Myself
Yeah.
and Patrick Smooth were already coming down to London for quite a few years, buying records, doing the runs, coming down to Kensal Rise, where VC was. What was the name of that? We talk about this a lot. What was the name of the little complex where you were, Aaron?
I mean, it was the top of Harrow Road. It was just called Kensal House.
Kensal
Where
House.
Virgin was. Yeah,
And was there
yeah.
little gardens, and you went over like a little bridge, like a little,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah,
Chinese garden or something?
It's basically the Grand Union Canal, and there was two sides to the building: the White House, which was Kensal House, and Kensal Dock, and there was a bridge across. Yeah, and it was, the whole thing was Virgin, but it was just split into two different buildings. But there was like a little canal and a little garden and all that. It was a nice place to work, actually. Great memories. Great memories.
I have really fun memories, and because it was just at the time I was making a name for myself on the radio in Birmingham as well. Been playing for quite a few years, but really starting to get some traction, really starting to hone my sound, going over to Miami as well and meeting a lot of the Americans. You know, we talk about it a lot on this show. And then we mentioned earlier when we were talking off air, you started working with Caroline. How did your residency come about that you had on a Thursday? And remind us about that.
Yeah, that was a fun thing. I mean, it was called Misdemeanors, and it was a Thursday night, and it was a very much a music industry event that was going on in London every single Thursday, and it ran consecutively for like 8 years. And yeah, it was good fun. It was good fun. She had all sorts, you know, when the US guys were in, she'd have, you know, like Morales would come play, and there was some amazing nights. And I just did the early set every week for that long, and it was a really fun part of the whole experience of that period for me, you know.
Would you say you were trying to emulate the likes of the Sound Factory bar in London? With it being an industry night, or was it not that underground?
Maybe. I mean, maybe that was a little bit of it for Caroline, because it was really her night. But I think it was just to, you know, bring together the industry, and it really did that. Everyone was there. It was the kind of, you know, London music industry hangout.
Okay. Caroline Prothero, I forget if I actually mentioned her name, so I wanted to give her a mention. Where, before I forget, I've got Craig Bartlett with us live. Good evening, Craig.
Yeah, Craig.
Saying, looking good, mate. You wouldn't understand. We've just had 45 minutes of nonsense trying to get my equipment to work. So you haven't missed anything. We've only been on air, however long, 10 minutes or so. And thank you to everyone else that's with us. Do feel free to leave a comment so we can say hi. Tell us about the Phil Asher connection. How and when did that come about?
Oh, I mean, yeah, Phil. I mean, really, Phil's kind of, rest in peace. His response.
Oh, typical. We've just lost you there completely, Aaron. Start again.
How my path progressed. You guys still hear me all right?
I can hear you, but you're frozen. Your picture's frozen. How do I refresh this? Yeah, I got you. You're back. You're back.
I'm frozen. Am I back?
You're back now. You're back now. Right. Okay.
Sorry,
yeah.
lads.
So start again from the very beginning about the Flash connection.
Yeah. So when I was working at Virgin, there was a guy that got a shout out called Nigel Wildman, who, you know, Neil, you definitely know Nigel, and Andy, I'm sure you would have met Nigel because he worked at Virgin as well. But he was the link to Phil. And he was the guy that introduced me to Phil, and Phil's studio was like a stone's throw away from the label, from Virgin. And we just used to go and hang out at the studio, and that's kind of where it started, really. And my connection with him started there probably around the same time, like 98, probably, you know, getting into that 99, around that time. And I was just inspired by the guy. You know, he was so just infectious with his whole kind of vibe, and him and Nigel really kind of schooled me on house music and schooled me on Masters at Work and Mood to Swing and you know, Basement Boys and history. And without that kind of introduction from those guys, I wouldn't have, you know, had the kind of understanding of it and had the kind of gone on the path that I went on. But yeah, so much of my path is really kind of Phil's responsible for it. But yeah, he was such a dear friend, and you know, opened so many doors for me. Like, not many people know, but obviously I had the radio show on One Extra, and like when I did that show, it was actually, they asked Phil to do that show, and Benji B had come to Phil and asked him to do the show, and Phil, being Phil, was like, it's not for me, but I've got someone. And he put me in the spot. And like, without him, I wouldn't have got that show. And without that show, I wouldn't have been part of Soul Heaven and on to Defected and all of that, you know? So yeah, I'm getting a bit choked up thinking about Asher, but yeah, it's so much kind of love for him.
It'll get you. So while you get choked up talking about Phil, Let me do the same to Neil and ask him about his the Trouble connection.
Well, that mainly obviously came from being in Release the Groove. Paul was always hunting music, always out searching for stuff that no one else could get. You know, he knew that obviously at the time, I mean, Jeremy was manager when I first started at Release the Groove, but he left after about a year and then I was made manager of Release then. So Trouble used to come down all the time. He knew I'd get test pressings of certain things from certain labels and I'd always hold stuff for him. And we just built a relationship from there, really. And it wasn't long after. Again, Jeremy, it seemed like at that time, everywhere Jeremy left, I stepped into. Sorry, Jeremy, but you left, son. So it was on me. But yeah, Jeremy was the resident at the Loft at the time. He went on to do something else, and then Trouble asked me to step in. And I'd been going to the Loft for years and years. Like it was one of the first clubs I took my wife to, and I've been going religiously every Wednesday. It was very much my church in London. Anyone that was into that sound at the time knew that was the place to be, to hear the best music without a shadow of a doubt. And then, yeah, he asked me to be resident there, and everything kind of snowballed from there. I suppose he was like Aaron's Phil, the first person to champion me, the first person to kind of push me into the limelight. Well, not so much the limelight, but push me forward and make other people aware of me. So again, you know, I've got so much to thank him for. And, you know, and he was a supporter up until the day he went. You know, that was the one thing with Trouble. He was forever consistent, always supported my music, would call me most weeks telling me to send him the new shit. He wants the shit no one else has got, and would pester me for it. But, you know, that was my boy. So he would always get stuff before anyone else. You know, I hold him in just as high regard as what Aaron does Phil. As much as I hold Phil in high regard as well. But, you know, that relationship came further down the road. Trouble, without a doubt, was the one that helped put me on the map. I think everyone needs someone, you know, to sing their praises and to believe in them. And thankfully, the pair of us had two of the very best.
Two of the absolute best.
True. Yeah. It's such an important thing, like that mentorship and without even like effortless mentorship. Do you know what I mean? Just being there and being that kind of guiding light for you. Do you know what I mean? Without it even being a thing. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. So just want to say hi to Garthy, also to Cy Gracia. Sending shouts out to you guys. More heads.
Good evening, gentlemen, and you, Craig, as well.
Part of our story. So then we skip forward because there's so many stories, so many tales, so many twists and turns. I guess the next part is to find out, Aaron, because I think you were the first person to get into the studio out of the two of you, right? How that came about?
Yeah, I was, and really, again, it was Phil. You know, Phil introduced me to the Akai MPC 3000, and you know, I took out a loan to buy one, and started making beats. And I was still living at home with my parents. Then it was definitely like early days. So probably around that kind of 99, 2000 kind of point, I guess. Yeah, but maybe just like backtrack a little bit to when I first met Neil, because Neil would have been at Release the Groove. I was working at Virgin, and I used to come in and bring in promos to swap them for records off the shelf. That was
which I wasn't meant to do, by the way.
No, nor was I. But that was a little.
We've all done that. We've all done that.
Exactly.
Shouts out to the Iceman. Shouts out to Thomas. Also, hi to Sean. Good to have you both here. Okay, so the Release the Groove connection. Sorry. So I'm trying to remember, Aaron, some of your early productions. What some of them, your individual ones that would spring to mind?
So, I mean, Tripping on Love was the first track that I made.
With Marcus, big tune.
Yeah, Marcus Begg. Yeah, that was the first tune that I actually produced. And I had a couple of remixes, a Dwelle remix, and a couple of other bits that were kind of
Trent Darby. That was a band.
Trent Darby. Yeah, that was kind of one that was didn't ever really come out officially, but everyone was playing it. It was one of them.
And under what name? Under what? Just your name? I can't remember.
It's my name, Rest the Soul, but Aaron Ross, Rest the Soul Productions, yeah.
Right.
And obviously, you know, going back to kind of the early days of making music, I think going back to the mentorship from Phil as well, him kind of bringing me into his Restless Soul crew, which was a very, very tight, kind of prestigious, massive moment for me, and a massive kind of like push forward, you know, as Neil said, you have people pushing you forward, and it's things like that Phil did that pushed me forward and gave me that inspiration and gave me that drive to want to make music and to want to be part of something and feel part of a crew. And yeah, he gave me, you know, I've still got them with his little notes on them, you know, zip discs, old school zip discs full of beats and sounds, which we used time and time again on Fanatic stuff. And you know, it was really down to him why I started making music. And like I said, everything, I can track so many things back to Phil. It's quite mad. And I've had this conversation with other people as well. He inspired a lot of people, opened the doors for a lot of people without, you know, just completely selfless and just kind of put other people before him. And that was just part of you know, what made Phil.
Mentioning Phil, one of the things, one of my finer moments, the track that I did with Sophia Rubina, that got released on Soul Heaven. Phil just put the beats down for me. Said, "Yeah, mate, you can have these, use these on the release." He was, you know, he was very, very generous like that, and I think it was with the help of his beats that record, you know, went on to be sort of like anthem status within the Vocal Booth family. A funny story, Neil, you probably won't remember this, or you probably will. One of the times we were sat at I think it was where Caister. Where's the Caister Weekender at Caister, is it? I know that's a stupid thing
like
to say.
Near Yarmouth, isn't it?
Okay, so
Caister. No, we didn't do Caister. Camber Sands, you must be talking about.
Was it Camber Sands where we were?
Yeah.
And I remember playing you some tracks in the car, saying, "What do you think of these?" And you were like, "Nah, your beats need some work, mate." Just like really blunt, just like really blunt about it. Yeah, it cut me to the core, because when I first met you at release, you were very, very you were very generous with your praise of when I used to come and play at Garage City. You know, you were really, really always giving me praise, and so I was like, "Yeah, I like that, Neil. Is okay?" And then that day, my opinion really changed.
You turned on me then.
you weren't expecting the brutal side of
the brutal, but it was fair but harsh. Harsh but fair, should I say? Harsh. Okay, so let's get back to you guys. Neil, when did you start making tracks? Did you start on your own, or did you only start when you started working with Aaron?
If I'm going to be completely brutally honest, I didn't have a bleeding clue what I was doing. I don't even know why Aaron got me involved to begin with, but I honestly did not have a clue. Aaron just was like, "Do you fancy making a record together?" And it kind of just went from there, even though I didn't know how to program. And even for years after that, you know, to hold my hands up and be honest, I didn't know how to program a thing. Aaron really took control when it come to programming beats, editing in Logic, and, you know, recording, so on and so forth. Aaron was that driving force. So
let's ask him why ask him then, Nick? Why ask him,
you know
Aaron?
What? There's passion and persistence and drive, and like there's so many things that come from kind of our collective, our duo, but also you'll find in lots of production teams and lots of setups where, you know, yeah, there might be someone who's a little bit more technical, but there's so much more to it, you know. It's vibes, and it's his brutal honesty about things in the room on the day where it's like, nah, we ain't doing that, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And it's we just clicked, man. It's really like it's hard to kind of it's not really deeper than that. We clicked, and there was a vibe musically, good energy, and it was like he was just up for making tunes. And like sometimes maybe I needed that push and I needed that drive, and I needed him to call and say, right, let's go. You know, I'll be round at 10. like, and it was, you know, it's that kind of thing. It totally is part of the process and an important part of it. And just the wealth of knowledge of the music. Like, don't get me wrong, I know house music, but he's got a few years on me, and just that depth of the knowledge of the New Jersey sound and the whole kind of thing, you know, it was an important part of it for me to be able to kind of mine that knowledge is definitely part of what made us be able to do what we could do.
Wonderful. Shouts out to Schoolie, locked on as well. How you going, brother? So timeline wise, would this have been before or after Soul Heaven had begun?
This is where it gets a bit patchy. I think it's probably after. I mean,
roughly the same time, I think.
So Soul Heaven began in 2000. Can't even talk. 2000. Soul Heaven began. Before then, we'd have all been doing Garage City and everything like that. Would have been already.
I didn't come into Soul Heaven until 2000. I mean, actually, yeah, end of 2001, probably around that. But I think we didn't. Really
because I came in at 2001.
Okay, so I was a bit
again. Jeremy left, and then I got his spot. So I think you came in a year or so after that, because I'm pretty sure you got your one extra show, and then after you got your one extra show, then you got made a Soul Heaven resident.
That's right.
Okay.
So
well, that's nice. So let's get to talk about the one extra. You already said that Phil opened the door for you. Did you feel that elevated you to a whole different platform, a whole different level?
Massively. I mean, you got to understand, at the point where I got the gig at One Extra was a pivotal point, because I was basically leaving the job that I'd had at Virgin Records for 6 years or whatever, and I was making a decision to step out of a kind of essentially a 9 to 5. But, you know, a 9 to 5 in the music business, but essentially out of that kind of, you know, that comfort zone of what I was doing in the career path that I was on in the day job at that point, to kind of like give it my all. Because I felt at that point I was DJing, I was making music, and I had the day job, and I wasn't really giving either of them 100%. But when the radio show came along and that gig, it gave me the kind of opportunity and the drive to then commit fully. So yeah, it was definitely a pivotal moment. And like, as Neil said, after a year or maybe even less of having the show, that the Soul Heaven thing came into play. And then I think it was probably, you know, a little bit after that we just started to get into it and started to get into the production stuff.
Right. I'd be very interested at some point, and I'm not sure if it will ever happen, to actually sit down with everyone concerned and get the full Soul Heaven story.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's a crazy story, isn't it? From start to finish to where it is now.
Yeah, but shout out to Ollie White. Shout out to Ollie White. You know, big love to Ollie. He took a chance to, you know, put me on and have me part of that whole thing, and you know, I got a lot of respect for Ollie for that. I think I met Ollie at the same time meeting you back when he was probably, you know, driving Terry Hunter for a gig or something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. So Radio One Extra, and starting to get a lot of attention and a lot of support for the music that you were making. In the meantime as well, Neil, you were really good friends with a lot of the heads stateside. They had a lot of respect for you, and you became really quite close with the likes of, I'm pulling names out of there, Spen and Terry Hunter. They're really close friends of yours, right?
Yeah, I mean, I actually met Spen. Well, again, I met him from the record shop, but when our relationship was cemented, I drove him to some gigs in around England. So it was, in fact, his very first Southport weekender that he played, and he played 2 other gigs on the same day. So we've been in a car for hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, we've got the most unlikely friendship ever. Like, he's a devout Christian, doesn't swear, doesn't drink, don't do anything else, and I'm the complete opposite. But somehow we just gelled, and we've been like the best of friends ever since. He's probably, you know, he's up there with my closest friends in the industry. You know, he's very consistent, checks in on me every week, and you know, we've got a great relationship. Again, like with Terry, Kenny Dope, I've got a fantastic relationship with, you know, and he was obviously instrumental. Kenny was instrumental in signing mine and Aaron's first ever record. When we did Higher, which was our first track, I played that to him. I was in France with him, not playing, but chaperoning him to a gig. Right. So Ollie had given me this job chaperoning Kenny. Basically, I had 300 quid to go over to Paris, chaperone him, look after him for the night, and that was it. So I went over there, drunk his old rider, got as pissed as a fart, and then he had to kind of pretty much put me to bed, and then he signed our record the next day. So jobs are good, but yeah, I've got some really close friends over in the States, and I have had for years. And they've always looked out for me as well and blessed me. So I'm very grateful.
Cool. So tell us about part of the journey then, just the general vibe of what it was like to be the Fanatics, the music that you were releasing, the people that you worked with, not the full discography, but, just try and sum up that whole era if you can.
We were talking about earlier. I was just going to say, I think the Blaze remix was a pivotal moment. And I think that, I think if I look at the Fanatics catalogue, that's definitely, as a remix, probably one of my proudest. It just the way it came together, that with just remembering working on it with Mike Patto, and then we had a hard work actually getting it released, and we had to go through a bit of a process there, because we kind of managed to get our hands on the a cappella and did the remix, and then we were just which is something you've got to do in this game. You've got to grab those opportunities. They may not come to you in the kind of traditional way of someone asking you to do a remix, but we just grabbed it and were like, right, we're going to do this, and did what we thought was a great job, and the label didn't like it and didn't want to release it. And,
I remember that.
Yeah, it was a bit of a. We had that a couple of times actually. There's another.
He actually, I think I'm sure Pete said your drums were whack on that record.
Yeah, Pete Harris, rest his soul. He didn't mince his words, and he wasn't into it. And I remember, I had a couple of funny conversations with him about it. But in the end, Kevin loved the mix. Kevin from Blaze, and he was involved obviously in West End Records, who had the license for the record in America. It was Slip and Slide in the UK, and they went for it and put it out in 2000. I think it was, I looked, November 2004. But we'd probably made it, a good few months earlier than that. But for me, that's just a really special moment in the story, because it's early, and it was like a break, I guess, for the Fanatics name, wasn't it?
100%. I mean, a lot of work went into that record. Me and Aaron was talking about this earlier on today. We couldn't time stretch the vocals. They just bubbled all over the place. So we ended up having to cut, well, not we, Aaron ended up having to cut every single phrase of the vocal to get it to fit in time with a remix. So we put a ton of work into that record. And like I said, it was certain DJs that really made people take notice of that. Like Louis really championed that record. Spen did, Frankie Feliciano. And I think obviously that brought it to the attention of Kevin Edge. And,
So if there's anyone that's watching, lived under a rock for the last 20 years, tell them the full release and the title of the track.
It's Blaze, Found Love, Fanatics remix on West End and Slip and Slide.
The turning point, as you say. Cliff Williams, he's saying that. Sorry, mate.
No. I was just going to say it was an inspirational moment for us to just keep going,
Mm-hmm. Cliff Williams says Sarah Devine, one of his favourite singers that you did some work with.
Yeah.
Sarah Devine, that's a name for somebody else. Because I'm sure I played a record of hers the other day, and I thought Sarah Devine's a name for somebody else, right?
When her name Linnea or something like that before.
So she was under, Linnea.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, she did Hard Drive, Never Forget.
Forget.
That was under the name Linnea.
Mm-hmm. Well done, Neil. I knew that was in the back of my mind somewhere.
I don't remember much in life, but music. Music
is there. So, in between working hard in the studio, this would have given you the wonderful opportunity to go global and play around Europe, play further afield, whether it be under the Soul Heaven banner or whatever. Tell us some of the highlights of your international touring gigs, things that immediately spring to mind.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know whether you'd agree with this, Aaron, but we didn't actually play that much together.
No, because you obviously were established kind of before we did that. So
yeah, I think obviously, you know, we'd both kind of built our own separate names within the scene. So even as Fanatics, we weren't really booked that much together. I mean, we did a few things. Obviously, we did Southport Weekend.
We did Southport, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and we did a few other bits and pieces, but I think people knew that, especially UK promoters, knew that they could either put mine or Aaron's name on the flyer and just stick Fanatics next to it.
Yeah, I think you're doing yourselves a disservice though, because you were fairly decent. I mean, you know, we booked you a few times for Vocal Booth.
Yeah.
No, did he ever book it? Yeah, we played once for Vocal Booth.
Once we did it together, yeah. But yeah, I guess it was just like Neil said, it was one of those things like we were established in our own right, and I don't think for us it was like, oh, we need to be doing loads of gigs as Fanatics. It was like we love making music and putting records out, and we loved doing what we were doing as DJs. And sometimes it was together, sometimes it was on the same lineup with yourself at Soul Heaven, and yeah.
Aside from as Fanatics, just your international DJing gigs individually, some of the things that immediately spring to mind, some of like, you know, the amazing parties that you've been to and seen and done.
I mean, Miami is always going to be right up there for me. But as you said, Miami is just one of those. It's just, I guess, you know, we all did it a few times, and it became a kind of thing that was a regular yearly thing, and so many good memories of good times and good parties and funny times and just all being together. And like Neil said, we had a pretty, you know, especially Neil, but obviously as Fanatics and us together, we had a pretty good kind of network of friends and people who were DJs in the American scene. So it was always good to just kind of get together. That's up there for me. But we did, I mean, for us, actually, I think the number one Fanatics gig, aside from doing Southport, was when we did the Masters at Work party. I mean, that was...
Yeah, that was good, but I've still got shocking memories about that, because you used to play with your CDJs on vinyl mode, and I used to play with them on CDJ mode. And I remember trying to mix out one of Aaron's records, and I touched the top of the platter and fucked it up. And I was fuming with myself afterwards. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that was 2005. So yeah, I remember the T-shirt. I mean, that was an epic Masters at Work party at it was Nikki Beach, that one, but it was a definite like special Fanatics DJ memory.
Good. Neil, I remember us. I just remember being on a plane with you coming from Dubai or somewhere one at a time and not going, Neil, what are you doing? Do you remember that?
I mean, I've not had that many memorable gigs in Dubai, but I've had a few.
Or you might have been coming from Hong Kong or somewhere. Or something like that. I don't know. I
mean, I would definitely say the places I hold dearest to me, definitely Italy. I've had so many good gigs over there. Big props to like Luis Radio. He was the first person to book me over there. And especially when they did the Room 26 club nights. There's a time I got to play the whole night from start to finish, which I've never ever done before or after. So that was a proper standout gig for me, because I think every DJ, you always know how you want a night to start, finish, do you know what I mean? And what the middle needs to be like. And when you get to do that yourself, that's always a special thing. And I've always had quite a lot of love in Italy. So I've got loads of fond memories over there. Aaron will know this, you know, I've been going to Thailand for years and years and years. I go and play over there every single year, and I've got amazing memories over there. I mean, I played in so many countries, and I still pinch myself now because of this, because, you know, the first time you ever get on a plane and someone's paying for your flight and your hotel and giving you a DJ fee to play anywhere is just mind-blowing. But then to start doing that on a regular basis is just, you know, it's still even hard to comprehend now. Well, not that I'm going anywhere at the moment, but, you know, before, you know, it's still something I feel very blessed to be able to do. But I mean, I'm going to be really honest. I've gone all over the world and played everywhere, but for me, there's still nowhere like London. But that's probably because that's my crowd. That's my people. I know so many people in London.
We'll get onto your London crowd. We'll get onto that London crowd. I'm conscious of just skipping through the timeline because there's so many important parts of this story. I think the next thing for you, Aaron, is the defected story. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I guess that kind of does follow. I mean, it really, you know, Soul Heaven is the catalyst for the defected thing, because as a resident for Soul Heaven, I was basically kind of introduced to the label side of Soul Heaven and being involved in that. And that was a joint venture set up with Defected. So it was Soul Heaven that kind of brought me into the Defected thing. And before I was really getting stuck into the Defected stuff, it was more about launching the Soul Heaven label and signing Pev and Everett to Stuck, which was mad scenario, getting that deal done and you know, getting Phil to do the remix. We didn't have any parts, so we had to just like make it work using the original. Mad one, getting the actual deal done with Pev. I actually flew out I was flying to New York anyway, but ended up going over to Chicago and giving him an envelope of cash to do the deal, basically.
Nice.
But yeah, it's and then from there, you know, Simon, we were working on the Soul Heaven thing, and the Defected A&R opportunity came up, and I was starting to do some stuff there, and it was, you know, like Fish Go Deep, Curing the Cause. It was that kind of period.
Okay, so some of your proudest moments that you can lay claim to that you brought along.
I mean, Pev and Everett Stuck, Fish Go Deep, Curing the Cause. God, what else? My brain's gone blank now. Spen and Mark Evans, the first one. You know, I don't even know. See, I'm so bad with titles. I can't remember what it's called.
The Way You Love Me. That
Yeah.
actually reminds me, and I totally forgot about this, Neil. I'm sure we would have got to it. You had a label, Hustle, right?
I did, yeah.
Totally forgot all about that.
Yeah. So
what year was that? Because you signed the first Mark Evans, didn't you?
I signed The Way You Love Me before Defected signed it off of us. Mm-hmm. But we had some great releases on that. We put out one of Mr. V's first remixes on that label. Jihad Mohammed, when he was not really very well known. We had Kerry Chandler, who did remixes of DJ Pope, and very early Guy Robin, mixes of To The Rock. So we had some really good records that came out on that label as well. So that was my first venture into, I suppose, A&R and running my own label.
Mm-hmm. And did you have a dabble with A&R for Soul Heaven as well at some point? Did you get involved?
Yeah, when Aaron went on to work for Defected full time, they asked me to come in and take over to do the A&R for Soul Heaven. My first signing was Terry Hunter's Wonderful, which was a huge track for Terry. Still a big track now. And
I remember seeing her perform that at Soul Heaven. Do you remember when she did it live on stage?
I remember. So yeah, I mean, I can't actually remember that many records that I signed for it, but I was there for a while. I think like about 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then I finally left Soul Heaven because I just wanted to go on and do my own things. And that was when I left Soul Heaven the year after that is when I formed Remy with Ziggy.
Okay. So before we get to that, Aaron, the Defected story, anything further from that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many moments over the period of time that I was there. I mean, we relaunched Strictly Rhythm. That was a big thing that I was involved with, and just like the legacy and the history of that label, to be involved with relaunching something like that was just immense. And you know, did different catalog deals with Tommy Musto and MK and different people over the years that we worked with to kind of, you know, re-release their catalog and stuff like that, and just being involved also for me as a DJ when there was a transition from One Extra to Defected on a radio tip as well. You got to remember, I did 5 years at One Extra, and then I left One Extra to host. Well, part of what I was doing with Defected was to host their radio show, and started to do their radio show, which was on Galaxy and syndicated worldwide. And you know, we took that show from just syndicated on a few stations to being all over the world. So that was a big part of it. And what came with that was obviously DJing for them, and you know, going to Tokyo and going to Brazil and like going back to the international thing. The memories that I've got of traveling internationally and DJing, I think, you know, Tokyo is right up there. You know, I played doing a 5-hour set at Air, which was a club in Tokyo, and you know, just like the crowd, best crowd ever.
It's funny. I'm sitting here listening to you, casting my mind back to when we spoke about doing this. You said, "No, I don't really know what I can talk about. I'm not really sure I'm that relevant in the software."
He ain't fucking shut up, has he?
No, but I mean, on paper, such an important part, such an important role, so many key moments in this thing that we call the Soulful House scene, man. I just got to give you some props, massive props.
Man.
And we're still even halfway through the story yet. So let's push it on. When did you finally decide, and what was the deciding factor to call it a day for the Fanatics? I don't think there was any fallouts, was there?
No, not at all. Never. I think it was just I guess for me, it was like the day job kind of took over a bit more, like Defected and doing A&R and being in the office. And, you know, I had kids. Neil had kids a lot earlier. And I guess it was at a time where I suddenly needed to obviously, you know, work a lot more 9-to-5 style. And obviously having a young child, it just became hard for me to find the time. Really, that was probably it, wasn't it, Neil? And I think,
yeah, I mean, I think, how old's your youngest one now, Aaron?
11.
So it definitely weren't that then. So I just remember at the time, obviously, you know, anyone that produces music for a living will know that, you know, 1 month you can earn 50 quid, and then the next month you can earn a couple of grand, depending on how well things are going, you know. And obviously Erin was young with a young family, just got married and was renting privately, and obviously there's all those pressures of being able to afford to pay the bills. You know, before that, Erin was living with a guy called Pat, and you know, we was afforded, or he was afforded more to be able to do what he wanted to do. But I think at that time it was, you know, he just had to do what he had to do to provide for his family. And, you know, you can never take away from a man the fact that they want to do the right thing by their family. So, you know, I don't think me and Aaron ever had a crosswords in the whole time that we worked together. I mean, there was times that I probably wound him up, or, as we was talking about earlier, rip the sleeves off his coat and things like that. But we never really had, like, we never had a fallout. We never had a crossword. It was just circumstantial, you know, to the point where he was providing for his family, and I had to respect that, you know.
Cool. So you mentioned about the Remy connection. I did a podcast actually with Ziggy a while ago now, so I know the full story of how you guys met. And you didn't actually start the label immediately, did you?
No, we did a couple of tracks together. Well, more that was just, he was more, you know, coming through. Si Says introduced Ziggy to me. He came around my house and we had a little bit of a meeting, and he was really awkward and quite shy, which is the complete opposite to what Ziggy's really like. And then he just started hanging out with me in the studio. I was doing some solo stuff at the time, and he'd come to Tony Economides' studio when I was doing sessions with Mike Pato. And we just started hanging out, and then how he done it was really clever, because he was just adding little ideas without pushing himself into the mix. So he was like, oh, you know, maybe if you did a bass line that like this, it might work better. And every idea he had worked, you know. So then before you know it, we just ended up making a few records together. And before you know it, I'm just saying to him, well, look, you know, we obviously work really well together. Let's do something. And it just kind of just went from there. Mm-hmm. Very much in the same kind of vein as me and Aaron, where we just connected really, really, really well. And, you know, especially the first 3 years of working together, it was just really good energy. You know, we just loved each other's company, just loved experimenting, making music. And, you know, I've got nothing but precious memories working with both of these guys.
And you've pulled out some absolute monsters. The first thing that jumps into my mind is, of course, the Diamonds track. You got to be extremely proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, again,
I know the story behind that. Tell us the story about the whole diamond thing.
Well, do you know what? There's not really much of a story other than we did a track and it was quite a deep groove. We originally booked Hannah to come in to do the vocals, but she said, oh, I've got this young lady who works with me, helping with some songwriting and that. Would you mind if she come in with us? So I was like, no, that's fine. She came in and they started harmonising together. So we was like, nah, both of you need to be on this record. So they both went in and done the record together. And then afterwards, I was listening to the record over and over again, and the vocal was so good. I thought the groove just didn't fit it, because the vocals felt quite, obviously there was uplifting and positive, but the groove was really deep. So we completely changed everything in that record and put it out. And the rest was history, really. I mean, sometimes you get a good feeling about a record and you're bang on the money. And other times you think a record will do really well and it does nothing. But that record was one of them ones that I just knew it just worked. You know, I'm sure anyone that makes music understands this. When you cannot wait to play your own production out, you kind of know. And I do trust my ears. I do trust my taste, even though I've got it wrong many times over the years. But that one I knew. And even like when me and Aaron was working together, the records that ended up being quite big for us, I knew they would be big. You know, you just get a feeling. There's an energy when it comes to making music. There's an energy that's attached to making music. And sometimes when you're really vibrating really high and just buzzing in the studio, there's something that goes into the music at that time that can't really be explained, but those records do well.
Mm-hmm. Matt Pope is asking, who does the instrumentation on your tracks? So I mean, there's probably a lot of names to pull out of the news. I'll ask you first, Neil. I'll ask Neil first, then I'll come to you, Aaron.
Yeah, in Fanatics, it was the main players were definitely Mark de Clive Lowe, Mike Pato, a lot of Kylie Tatum.
We were all connections through Phil. We got to just acknowledge that like all of these guys are Phil's guys, and we were lucky enough to be introduced to them through Phil.
Yeah, and even our mix engineer at the time, Tony Economides, another Phil connection. And what was Andy's name, the bass player?
Andy.
Andy bass.
Yeah, so Andy, the bass player as well.
Andy,
but then with me and Ziggy, Ziggy played pretty much on every record, apart from Diamond, and Mike Pato played the keys on that record. And on certain records where we've wanted absolute outstanding bass lines, we use a guy called Freddie Thompson, who played on Diamond. He played on Mask Off. He played on our remix of A Diva as well. Freddie used to play for Shaka Khan and has played for loads of other fantastic artists. So,
we were also lucky enough to do quite a few tunes with Albert Menendez. Who,
sorry.
Like Albert was like that Masters at Work era from, I don't know, what would it have been, kind of like late 90s?
Definitely in the times around like BB Winans, Thank You, Sarah Divine,
exactly.
You know.
late 90s, early 2000s, and we like Albert's the loveliest dude, and we just clicked with him and did a bunch of stuff with him. I mean, you know, we put him on, he'd be on feature Sterling Ensemble as well, and some great tunes that we worked on with Albert, and you know, he was a connection to Sarah Divine and that.
Yeah, so that's what I was about to say. The gentleman, I forget who it was, who talked about Sarah Divine, that was Albert's connection. Albert connected us with her.
Wicked. And he's touring with Shakira now, right? All around the world.
And he's been touring with Shakira for years, from back then as well, like, you know, 15 or 20 odd years, I think. Great
guy. So where do we go next with the story then? What jumps out at you immediately? So I'll come to you in a second, Neil. Aaron, after Defected, tell us about the timeline.
Well, you know, Defected was a stint. It was 6 years from the kind of like early part, as I mentioned, with Soul Heaven and into some early A&R stuff, and 6 years there. And yeah, 2012, I just got to a point like where I was kind of looking for something else from my career in that side of music. And by this point, I'll be honest, I wasn't really, I might mess around with some beats here and there, just like, you know, in my own time for fun, but I wasn't making music, and I wasn't really focused on DJing. I was DJing for Defected, but it wasn't like the kind of thing that I wanted to put all my focus into. What I wanted to do was kind of get back to what I experienced when I was at Virgin in the early days, which is being more involved and surrounded by hit records, really, I would call it, and by artists in the more mainstream side of the business. And while I was at Defected, I signed an artist called Guy Robin, who a lot of us will know from his great work within the Soulful House scene. And
a huge amount of collaborations that he did. Really soulful productions, and a young guy as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was so. I mean, my history, a bit of a timeline with Guy, because I first met him when I was at One Extra, and he was like, Neil will remember him, you probably will then, but he was young. He was like 14, just trying to get involved, giving people CDs, absolutely relentless, just kind of trying to get into the scene. And you know, he was sending me stuff when I was on One Extra, like R&B bootlegs of you know, house remixes of R&B tracks, and I played them on the show. And then, you know, I remember the producer from the show was like, this kid whose tunes we've been playing, he's 14. Like, we should get him in on the show. And he came in with his dad and did an interview. And then fast forward a few years later, we kept in touch. I was at Defected, signed him to Defected as Guy Robin. And then fast forward a few more years, and we've done a few releases on Defected. And my feeling of wanting to kind of get into the mainstream side of the business was also something that he wanted to do. And we kind of like spurred each other on, egged each other on to kind of to lead the safety of Defected, him as an artist, me as an A&R, and to kind of step into the unknown a little bit with me managing him and setting up a management company. And yeah, that was 2012, and I haven't really looked back. I set up my company then, and it was you know, it's been a mad journey. But just to kind of in a snapshot, 10 years next year since I set up the company, and it took a few years to really take flight. But in the early part, I was, you know, working with Sandy Rivera, Roger Sanchez, a bit of work with the Shapeshifters. So I was still, you know, very kind of involved in house as well. But then, Guy had a hit with the cover of Fast Car under the name Jonas Blue, and we haven't looked back.
I think you just need to be more. I think you need to announce that better, because not everybody knows this story, and it's a really impressive and important story.
It is. So Guy'd always been a great producer, making great house music. You know, he was very, very good at hearing something and knowing how to do it, knowing how to emulate it and give it, you know, emulate it in a way that sounded authentic. And he did it time and time again in house. And then as we were doing what we were doing from 2012, he wanted to be a producer in the pop kind of sense of being a producer. And you know, we tried to crack it, and it was really tough. And we had a couple of tough years trying to get into that world, which is a very, very kind of, it's a closed kind of circle in pop production. Really hard to get into that world if you're not already kind of connected in a kind of way with an artist or whatever. And then I do remember distinctly just saying that, you know, let's just go back to making house music, dance music, and you know, artist projects, and see what comes of that. You know, pretty confident that that would be a better path than trying to kind of get into that inner circle of pop production. And yeah, you know, had a few things that he did under the different name scales, and then he just had this idea to do a cover of Fast Car, Tracy Chapman, and to do it in a style that was very, very kind of, it was just massive globally at that kind of time, 2015. And, you know, different to everything that he'd done as Guy Robin in the Soulful House world. So, you know, came up with this alias Jonas Blue, didn't really kind of like have huge expectations, but
who came up with the name Jonas Blue? Was it you?
It was a combination. Yeah, I came up with the Jonas bit, he came up with the Blue bit. But yeah, and we never expected it to go the way it did, but it very quickly went pretty mad, and signed a deal. Ironically, signed it to Virgin, the label that I worked at all those years before, and it just went from signing the deal around October to releasing it end of November, beginning of December. And it was like Christmas #1 in Australia. And we were just like, what? And it just went mad. And it traveled its way back from Australia to the UK. It was a hit there first, and then slowly worked its way through, you know, Asia into Europe, and became a hit in the UK. But it was a big hit. It wasn't just a kind of, you know, a little hit.
Yeah, because and everybody was like, you do know Jonas Blue, that's Guy Robin, and Aaron's working with him, and so we were all like super happy. Obviously, we'd followed the journey down that road, but not everybody is aware of that story, and so I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that.
He kept it quite separate. You know, I don't think, you know, we weren't necessarily announcing, like, you know, to our kind of Soulful House world that it was him. There wasn't really that connection, so I don't think many. No, not.
It kind of defeats the object when you come up with a pseudonym. It defeats the object. If you say, well,
exactly.
he used to be selling 200 copies of a track, but now he's a worldwide superstar.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, got to give him props, because he's just always had that kind of. And again, like going back to what I said about Neil with the drive and the tenacity and the passion, like those kind of elements of what it takes to be an artist, no matter what level or what scene, like to be an artist that is making progress and is having success. Like, talent's important, it's the most important thing, but the drive and the tenacity and the way that you approach your daily kind of work as an artist is so important. And he had what Guy had was everything. So it became this kind of perfect storm.
Well, I want to focus more on yourself, but as part of the Jonas Blue story, because it is monumental. You must have. I asked the question. I'm not projecting it on you. Did you ever find you were at your depth? Because he was absolutely huge, right? I mean, did you ever find yourself in positions and you thought, "What's going on?"
I mean, I didn't ever think I was, but I remember someone who's an agent, like a brand agency, like saying to me later, God, that first meeting, you didn't really know what was going on. But there were certain areas that I was learning as we were going, like, you know, brand partnerships, how you connect brands with music and stuff like that. Like, there's so much, because management is an all-encompassing involvement in every element of an artist's career. But there's certain things, you know, only certain artists unlock certain things. Do you know what I mean? But to be fair, we kind of unlocked it all with that. So yeah, I definitely found myself in moments where it was like, whoa. But do you know what I will say is that everything that I did prior to doing management just gave me a better kind of grounding to do it, because whether it was a radio show, whether it's making music and knowing how to articulate, how to change something in a track or whatever, or having the knowledge of broadcasting and radio, all of that like played a part in me being kind of ready to deal with those situations, to be honest.
Did you ever have any hands-on input with his productions or not at all?
I mean, like, Yeah, like we'll do it. Like I'm always giving him feedback, and he always kind of takes it on board. And yeah, it's part of the process. It always has been, and I think it always will be. It's not like very hands on.
Are
Very
you still
hands on.
working together now?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
because I'm
absolutely.
totally I'm totally out of the
No, no, no.
picture with what's going on. So where's
Yeah.
he at generally now?
So he is working on an album. We have got a single coming out in January, and yeah, I mean, look, there's been some monumental global hits. There's been some records, like Neil said, where you think they're going to be hits and they're not, and that's part of the ebbs and flows and ups and downs of being an artist. And yeah, it's definitely at a level though where we're kind of he's established to the point where, whether it's international touring or whether it's, releases, I think there's such a strong base there for him that we're just continuing to do what we do. And I had a chat with him today about just making records that he's really passionate about and not doing records that he doesn't feel that passion for, which was something that he said. And it's something that's important, I think, for all artists. Again, whatever music you're making, be passionate about it, love it, and then the best thing will come out of it.
Wicked. Well, that's to sit and listen to that story. It's very impressive, and I congratulate you, my friend. I'm very, very happy for
Thank
you,
you.
and long may it continue. Neil, sitting listening to all that while he's becoming a manager of a global superstar, you're sitting scratching your ass doing what?
Scratching the arse. I'm just doing my own thing, Andy. Like,
No, take it back, because you had the Remy, then the Remy kind of, you and Ziggy both decided again, like with you and Aaron, you wanted to do your
well,
own
no, in
things.
fact, to be fair, again, it wasn't my decision. I was more than happy to carry on. Ziggy's a true musician, and and what I love about him, he's very, very true to himself. And it got to a point where he felt like he'd done what he wanted to do in house music. And I know that he was in quite great turmoil over this, because we become really close friends. Because, and not just that, but part of my family, my kids love him. He'd come to my house every single day. We'd work in the studio. So, he was an integral part of my family. But it come to the point with Ziggy where, he just wanted to do his own thing. He wanted to explore what he wanted to explore. And he just said, my heart just ain't in it anymore. So I had to, once again, let him go off and do what he felt like he needed to do. Mm-hmm. And after that, again, I'm not even going to lie, it was quite difficult, because I've been through two partnerships, one with Aaron that lasted about 6 years and one with Ziggy that was for 7 years. So for 13 years, I'd been in partnerships with people. And I like being in a partnership. And the reason I like being in a partnership is that I believe in what I bring to the table, but it's a bit of a comfort blanket as well for me. That it's a bit of someone reaffirming what I think is right. Mm-hmm. So just letting me know, like, actually, that idea is a great idea. It works. Whereas when you're by yourself, all of a sudden, it's like, are these ideas that come into my mind actually any good? And that's been the next obstacle to have to overcome. Just, can I do this by myself? Mm-hmm. My mind will tell me sometimes, no, I need someone to work with. But then it's about battling through that and understanding that, this is what I love. I've loved this music for so long. I don't want to make anything else. I don't want to do anything else. This is what I love to do. And for me to be happy, I have to do what feels right in my heart and in my soul. You know what I mean? So I just, I continue by myself. I still, don't get me wrong, Ziggy's still very instrumental to that. He's still my session musician with every record that I make pretty much now. So he still comes around, he plays keys for me. Difference is I pay him now rather than before we'd sit together every day. But now it's just my ideas, what I want to do, what I want to produce, what I'm feeling, which in one part was scary, but in the other part is quite freeing, because you've got nothing to hide behind. You know, it's just you.
Well, I'll put a pin in that comment there because it'll remind me to discuss the topic that you put on Facebook earlier. We'll talk about that. But before we get to where we are now with your productions, we'll roll back a little bit to your foray into promoting, because I think that's also a very important part of the story. The first parties that you did, was there any before Beat Players, or was Beat Players?
Yeah, I did. Me and Aaron run a successful night together, Fanatics Night at Neighbourhood Club.
Of
for,
course, of
I don't know how many
course.
years that went on for, but we had.
So I don't remember that because I didn't get to play there.
No. You was past yourself by date.
Let's get this right though. This geezer is he's born to be a promoter. Like, there's no one better to promote a party than Neil Pearce. Like, I remember him giving me stick at our parties. How come you've only got this many people coming down? I've got this. And it was just, he always just had that. And you know what though? It's just testament to kind of Neil's connectivity with people and people just wanting to kind of be part of the energy. Do you know what I mean? Without sounding kind of wanky about it. But it's like, it's true, man. It's like all that whole family of people, like you say, that you've got in London. It was like, for you to get them down to a party was easy because you're Neil and they want to come and hang. Do you know what I mean? They want to hear the tunes and be part of that vibe. And I think that's always traveled with you. But anyway, as you were, so yeah, like, what did we do? So we did what was Herbal?
No, that was the night we did. Well, my first ever promotion was in '96, and that was a night called Off the Cuff. And that was again just all my friends, no one else. That was me trying to break through and thinking if I put my own night on. And I booked like Trouble, I booked Jeremy. I can't remember who else, but I think Lyndon C. There was a few DJs that I booked, but I thought if I put this night on, I maybe get recognised. You know, that didn't happen because I played warm-up sets and no one was there for the warm-up set, so it was only my mates that were there early doors. But then obviously we did the Fanatics Night. After that, we joined forces with Pete, who runs BBE. So we did a night called There It Is at Herbal. We was there for a few years, weren't we?
Yeah.
And then after that, on to Beat Players, and then from Beat Players to Deep Into Soul. And I've been with Deep Into Soul for nearly 9 years now.
Okay, and all of the promotions, even the most successful parties, as we say time and time again, people think you're sitting on bags of cash, but it's hard work, right? And it's never ever as successful as people believe.
I mean, if everything goes to plan, great, you can make a few bob. But there's been nights where you've literally put your bollocks on the line and lost $5,000. And in my own mind, I've thought, you know, this party would definitely sell out, and it hasn't. It hasn't even come nowhere near close to selling out. So it's a very difficult thing to do. You need to have the money to lose. And like for me, I've got a family. So to lose family money, trying to put something on that you're passionate about is a worry, because the last thing you want to do is end up divorced because you're losing family money. But it's something I'm passionate about. You know, when your party's full and everyone's having a great time, it's the best feeling in the world, knowing that you played a part in, you know, that whole concept and the idea and it coming to fruition. So, I mean, for me personally, it's something that I still get nervous every single party because nothing's ever a given.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I think people don't understand. It's like, the difference between 100 or 200 people can be the difference between you losing a couple of grand and making a couple of grand. You know, it's like a big percentage of the people that walk through the door are just paying the bills. And then after the bills are paid, it's the final 100, 200, 300 people where your profit actually lies. And it doesn't always come to fruition. You don't always get those people through the door, you know, and it's a big risk you take every time. I always say to people, if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it. Mm-hmm. And it's not that easy.
We've had conversations so many times down the years, whether it's about the venues or whether it's about the headline DJs you're booking or the support DJs. And I've always chuckled to myself because you mentioned a phrase earlier, and it's something that's always stuck with me, that you've always said, well, if you ain't bringing nothing to the table, what are you to me? Do you know what I mean? And you stand by that always. You believe that
100%.
everyone's got to play their part.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, you know, I don't understand. There's kind of a bit of a culture that I see at the moment where people are like, oh, you know, I'm paid to DJ. If a promoter would, like, if a promoter should be promoting. Totally agree with you, but at the same time, I don't understand why any DJ would be on a lineup and not want to shout about it, not want to tell their friends. You know, I know you very much come through the same way as me, Andy, in a sense where, you know, if I was playing at Garage City, I would be on the phone to every single person I knew because I would want them all there supporting me, you know. And those things don't go unnoticed. You know, promoters notice people, and it's all very well playing good music, but if I've got man A and man B, and man A plays good music but doesn't do anything to promote the party, and man B does everything he can and brings his own little crowd with him and they're all there cheering him on, it's going to be you all day long because it's a business. It's a business the same as any other business, you know. So that's the thing. I've always tried to, even myself as a DJ, if I'm playing for someone, I'll promote it. I'll talk about it. I'll add my friends to the event page. I'll do what needs to be done because I understand that that's still a big part in spreading the awareness and what promoters need to make their party successful. And I know that because obviously I'm a promoter.
Well, we'll get to, I want to ask you some more about your promoting. Before I do that, I want to hear a little bit more from Aaron. Do you ever miss going out and spinning? Do you ever think to yourself, you know,
I
might give it a little go?
Yeah, I definitely do. You know, there's moments where I'm like, just that energy and that feeling when, you know, the crowd's responding to a tune, or, you know, you just, you can't beat it. And I do miss it. And I'll be out like with Guy or with other artists that I'm working with and they're DJing, and, you know, I kind of in the booth and I get that kind of like, get that little kind of envious thing. And I do miss it. But, you know, it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's a lovely chapter for me, but it's something that's not really an active part of what I'm doing. I mean, things pop up here and there, but it tends to be like a 50th birthday or a wedding that I'll get rolled out.
Nothing wrong with being 50. Nothing wrong with being 50. You'll be there soon enough. Do you have an affinity with the crowds that you're in front of? Because it must be a much younger crowd now. Do you ever think, bloody hell, I'm old?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There are moments where I'm like, God, I must be the oldest geezer here, for sure. But it depends, you know, it depends. You know, a few drinks, feel young again.
Yeah, I was talking about a few drinks on my Facebook yesterday. Right then, Neil, so we're getting towards the end of the story, even though I'm fully aware we've skipped over so many things, so many twists and turns. I think that another really important part of your story is hooking up with Southport Weekender, which really has catapulted you to another level. I think you'll agree.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's crazy because, yeah, again, like when I first met my wife, we used to go Southport Weekender. You know, I was that person on the dance floor, would dream of playing. And over the years, I built a really good relationship with Alex. But again, I think sometimes, and you said this before, Andy, because I've mentioned many times that I've been quite lucky. And you said, well, you know, I don't really believe in that. I believe you make your own luck. And even the relationship with me and Alex very much come about where I said to him, look, how do you feel about Deep Into Soul doing like Sunsea Beat reunion party? And you don't have to do anything. We just work together. It's your brand, but I host the party and I do everything. And, you know, we made those parties really successful. And ever since then, you know, our relationship has just gone from strength to strength to the point where he understands the value in Deep Into Soul, the connection that we have, especially with the London crowd. And we've worked quite closely together for the past few years to the point where, you know, he's given me an arena at every Southport festival. The next Southport Weekender, Deep Into Soul, going to be hosting the Saturday night. I got to pick the lineup that's going to be DJing that night. So,
Thank
I'm
you.
forever.
Thank you very much.
I'm forever, these are the kind of things, and I think what's really important is that sometimes, as long as you just keep working hard towards your end, and it's not even an end goal, because I don't think like that's what I want to do. I need to be in bed with this person or in bed with that person. But what I'm always looking to do is, how can I be of value to someone? What can I give to somebody to where they recognize what we're doing and how we can be of value to them? And so I suppose, by trying to push that forward and show people what I can do, I build good relationships with those people to where they want to work with me in the future. And I try to have integrity. I try to offer the best of myself and the best of my brand to what I can bring to the table. And so far, so good. It's always kind of panned out well for me. And again, do you know what? And I've got to give you props for this as well, Andy, because in the very early days of Deep Into Soul, it's actually weird, because I was on Resident Advisor a couple of days ago looking through ticket sales for our next couple of parties. And I just went back over the 10 years. And one of the highest early ticket sales was, we did a vocal booth reunion at Prince of Wales. And again, I think that was another thing that, again, helped put us on the map.
I remember that being obviously you've gone on to do amazing things, but that was a turning point. Definitely.
100%. And this is the thing. It's like, you have to give props to people that have helped you along the way. And you have to recognize that these different people helped establish your brand. It wasn't just you. That's how the conversation started, kind of gone full circle, is that you're always going to need people championing you. You're always going to need people that support you. And it's paramount to your success. If no one likes what you do, if you're arrogant, or, you don't care about your customers, then I think it's very easy to see. But I do care about our customers. I mean, I stay in contact very regularly with a lot of the people that attend our nights. I still send out group WhatsApp messages to, loads of the Deep Into Soul regulars and whatnot, so they can get early birds before anybody else, and just try and give a little bit more back to people, and just make sure that I'm accessible, not just as a DJ, but as a promoter as well, to where if someone feels that they've got something to, whether good or bad, some input to add, I'm there that you can actually say it to, and I can take on criticism and want to expand and elevate what we do as a brand to suit what you guys want. I think that's really important as well.
Well, listening to that, it's gonna lead me on to the next bit. I want to come back to the producing, because I'm conscious of the time's dragging on, so I don't want to keep you guys much longer. So, Aaron, if you'll bear with me for 1 second, I'm just gonna click on this button, and it's gonna obscure your face, Aaron. You won't see this, but it's gonna bring up on the screen Remy, number 66, Neil Pearce, Hannah Camo, Shackles. Do you want to tell us about that? Because you put up quite a deep post earlier explaining what this record means to you. It's going to be out very soon.
Well, it's actually out now. So.
Okay, it's out now.
But it's quite weird, because if you look over the history of the records that I produced, most of them have got a very positive, enlightening kind of message. They're all about keeping your head above water, believing in yourself, so on and so forth. And again, I think this come from stepping out by myself. And, I wanted to write records that I suppose showed another side of me, showed a more vulnerable side of me, and actually, spoke from the heart, rather than just saying stuff that I do believe in, but it's not always my case. So I do believe in positivity. I do believe in enlightenment. I do believe in uplifting yourself and being accountable and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we all have a dark side. We all have a side that we have to live with. And I think especially within if you're a DJ or a producer, because, you know, you can be at this game for a long time and see people come into the field and way overtake you, and you can sit down and be thinking, well, what the bloody hell are they doing that I'm not doing? Like, you know, you can really start to second guess yourself and start to not believe in yourself and start to, you know, question whether you've actually got any kind of ability. And so that record, I actually started writing. Me and Cheryl was actually on holiday in Thailand, having an amazing time, and I was sitting on a beach, and I started thinking about my journey, and I wrote the chorus to that record. But I didn't, again, I never thought it would get on to become a record. I just wrote the lyrics down. But then Hannah came in and we started working on a session together. And I said, can I just read you these lyrics that I wrote and see what you think? And I read them to her and she was like, oh, I think they're fantastic. And we just started developing the song from there. And obviously, again, as an artist, she understands, you know, Hannah's been in the game for a long, long time. She's been a backing singer for, you know, Grace Jones for like 15 years, Brian Ferry, some really big artists. And everyone that's in this industry, you will go through highs and lows. So for me, it was very much a personal journey to just get that stuff off of my chest of what I go through at times, the questions I ask myself, the doubts I have, what my own mind tells me, you know. And as I said earlier in the post, you know, I still get really nervous DJing. I have my whole life. You know, so I tend to, before I DJ, I'll have like 5 or 6 pints just to calm myself down, you know. But again, it's not the way forward, but it's just the way I learned to cope over the years. It's not that I'm not proud of the stuff I've done. I just always have questioned it. Am I as good as what some people say I am, or are they just my friends?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. You know, do these records actually stand up? Even when the records are doing well, I've still felt like an imposter to a degree. And I know that's my own mind. I know, like, you know, the records have done well, so I should accept that. But my own mind can tell me something completely different. So it was a very personal journey into the fucked up side of me.
Well, I think it will be refreshing for people to hear you be so open and so honest. And there's going to be a lot of people in the not so fortunate position as yourself who go through those same kind of thoughts. Aaron, I'm sure you relate to a lot of that as well.
Oh man, it's just, I think, yeah, a lot of people do go through that, and you do find yourself kind of questioning and looking at whatever it is that you're working on and being self-critical and overanalyzing. And I do think it is part of you know, for some of us, it's part of the daily kind of life of being a creative and kind of doing what we do, whether it's, you know, on business side or on making music side or whatever. I
think that's the important thing. You made a great comment there using the word creative, because you are bearing your soul to the world, aren't you? You are leaving yourself wide open for criticism.
But just giving Neil props for a second to take that steep path from having the comfort of working with me or Ziggy for so long, and then having to like actually say, right, now it's on me and I need to actually like really get my head into this. And, you know, like, big props, because I think it almost makes it harder when you've been working with other people for that long to then have to do it all yourself, because you're so used to having that comfort, right? I mean, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine being a bit, you know,
it is a comfort blanket, you know. It's like, you know, working with Ziggy is very, very similar. It's like when two people are vibing in the studio together, it's like what you're thinking is reinforced by the other, and the other person's reinforced by what you're thinking. So when both of your energies are involved in that record, and you're both vibes in like proper goosebumps when you're making a record, it's you just believe in it, and you've got that backup from the person by the side of you. When you're doing it by yourself, you can sit there and go, I think this is a great record, but then your head goes, is it? or is you saying it? You know, so it is much more difficult, like coming from working in partnerships to working by yourself. But for me, it was a question of, am I just going to stop and let the fear override me, or am I just going to try and combat that in one way or another? You know, I remember, like, because again, going back to Spend, because obviously he's a really good friend, I had a bunch of about 20 demos, and I was scared to put any of them out. And I sent them all to him, and I was like, be brutally honest with me, tell me what you think. Like, you know, I don't care even if you say they're shit. I'd rather hear that than you blow smoke up my ass for no reason. And he come back and he was just like, Neil, just finish the bloody records. They're all decent, just finish them. And that was the first kind of thing that spurred me on to, like, you know, I just need to just break through these shackles, as the song talks about, you know.
Getting a lot of praise from the comments. Still a lot of people watching, a lot of people giving you some good comments. Brother C saying powerful lyrics, Pogwash instant classic. Lisa Crampton saying she doesn't think you've got anything to worry about, giving you a round of applause. So, I mean, we've been talking for a while. I think we've covered a lot of important parts. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? Again, I always say this because there is so much depth to everybody's stories on this. We only scratched the surface, and I'm sure you guys will be happy to come back on again at some point, and we'll mix you up with some other guys, because once we get the history out of the way, the next time we get you on, we can laugh and joke about this time at Soul Heaven, or that time when you couldn't do that.
Yeah, we've got quite a few of those moments.
A hell of a lot of those. A hell of a lot of those. Way too many.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you would like to mention, or have we kind of covered everything?
I mean, I personally, I'd like to just obviously give my thanks and praises for everyone that has supported me over the years and has believed in me, and continues to support my career and buy my records. Obviously, it means a hell of a lot to me. You know, I'm just, you know, this is the thing, even going back to the mental health thing, is like, I'm very aware that I'm actually in a very blessed position. I'm in a position that so many people would give their right arm to be in, you know, and a position that I never envisaged, like 25 years ago, that I would ever be in. So I'm truly grateful for where I'm at, even though, like, you know, I'm not a superstar, or, you know, I'm not a Louis Vega or a Kenny Dope, but
I think you are, mate. You do yourself a disservice. Lolly is coming in and saying, we love you, front and center every set for Neil Pearce.
But Lolly has been there, like, this, like, out of everyone, that girl there, like, has been front and center for 20 plus years. Like, she's family to me, so she will say that.
Okay, a nice summary from Neil. Aaron?
I mean, just like, it's just nice to be here reconnecting with you guys and reminiscing and thinking about the time that me and Neil spent together, and, you know, just the opportunities that we kind of gave each other, and making music back then, and being like welcomed into the Soul Heaven family. Just, I guess all the memories are coming back, and it's just, yeah, I just want to kind of be thankful to everyone who played a part in whatever my journey's been, from, like I said, Soul Heaven to you know, us working together and putting out records and remixes and One Extra, and it's just lovely to kind of take a trip down memory lane, you know.
Definitely. Lee writes here as well. I didn't realise that Lee's been watching, saying a great perspective, guys. And Katrina also said earlier, your One Extra shows were absolutely incredible. So yeah, I think we'll bring it to a close here, guys, and I'll remind you, Aaron, of when you said, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about. I don't, you know, you both are up there, as I've always said it up to Neil many times. He's definitely one of my favorite UK DJs, if not the favorite DJ of mine in the UK. His energy and his music knowledge. Aaron, to see your journey from the beginning, to be able to bring you along to the very first Vocal Booth events in Birmingham on the Thursday nights, if you remember, at the Ministry Bar.
Absolutely, mate.
You know, I gave you some of your first gigs, and then to see you doing what you're doing, it sounds quite condescending, but I'm extremely proud of you, mate.
Oh,
And
not at all, man.
it's
I
absolutely
appreciate it
beautiful to
massively.
connect with you two guys.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having us.
You're more than welcome. I'm going to
It's the
say
first time
goodbye
I've
to
spoken
everybody.
Aaron in about 2 years, so like, thanks for reconnecting me and Aaron as well.
Yeah,
we'll definitely get you back on. I don't know why I'm echoing in my ear, but we'll get you back on, guys. I'm just going to unceremoniously kick you out of the Zoom, and I'll send you a message later and say thank you. Respect to you guys.
Thanks for everyone for listening.
Thank
See you later.
See you.
Tell
Bye-bye.
Right, there you go. All of my equipment decided to pack up again earlier. Jane, hiya Jane. Can't wait to listen back to the interview. Yeah, it was really, really good. We were supposed to go live at, I don't know why that's echoing. We were supposed to go live at 7 o'clock UK time, and my computer decided to not recognize one of the sound drivers, so we were like 40 minutes late in starting, but we've had a great turnout, so thank you to everyone that's still with us to the end, and of course if you're coming back and watching the recording, truly appreciated. Next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, all being well, I've got another conversation that will be just as interesting for all of my Midlands crew, especially the Birmingham Massive, Phil Gifford from Wobble, and Jockley from many more things than I care to mention. I'll be talking to those guys. Extremely interesting for the Birmingham crew, but also it'll be very interesting for anybody else. Please do try and join us next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. That's on the other channel, Inspire and Be Inspired. So Lee, Lisa, Neil, Cassandra, any other comments? Let me just scroll through, because I do like to try and be as inclusive as possible, just to show appreciation for you being here. Carlos, glad that you enjoyed that. Sean, from the beginning, respects my man. And everybody else. Martin Large, hi Martin. Ayodele, forgive me if I've just slaughtered that. John Rogers, Wes, yes, lots and lots of names, lots of people watching, shout outs. We have got many more guests lined up. It's gone out my brains now who is going to be in coming weeks, and take a look back at some of the guests that we've had in the past. And I got to give a shout out to Lee Wright, to Mr. Craig Bartlett and Mark Wilkinson, my resident Soulful House Mafia panelists who are usually here, but I wanted to get Neil and Aaron to myself tonight, so it was just the three of us talking. Thank you everybody. Moses, big up yourself, brother. Shout out, mate. I hope everything's good with you. Yeah, thank you everybody. Just me having a chat and enjoying it. I've got to give lots of love to all of the Access crew. Thank you for making things like this possible. It's your help on a monthly basis that makes it work. Thank you very much. I haven't got all my fancy toys, so I'm just going to press this button and say farewell. Thank you very much.